Hi everyone. So today I'm going to show you how to install and configure a XAMPP server to be accessible from the internet. So server-side development can often be a really arduous task to wrap one's head around and often requires a lot of different additional software to be fully functional. So the XAMPP package makes all of that easy by putting all the components that you need down into one package, into one space, and lets you basically run a couple different things. We will see the specifics in a little bit. So without further ado, let's just get started. So we're going to go to Google and just type in XAMPP, and you'll see the download. You can go straight to the download page, and we're going to take the latest version, 7.4, and just download it. If you have Linux or Mac, they also have the different versions for that there. So I already have the installation file, so I'll actually just go open that one. So we'll just run that. And that should start the installation process pretty soon. There are a few key things to look at for when you're installing. So for this, just say yes. It's just saying that any antivirus running on your computer could interfere with how XAMPP is trying to work, but usually it doesn't. If you do have issues with your firewall during the installation process, just be sure to turn off your firewall, and then install XAMPP, and then you can turn it back on again. So we're gonna select all the features. We just want to install all the features. We don't have to use all of them, but it's really useful to have all of them. So make sure that your file directory is in C XAMPP. Try not to put it in the program files or program files x86, just because there are a couple issues that could arise from that. So just to stay on the safe side, you can just install them into its own folder. So I'm just gonna add another P, and so just English, go next. And that means that our installation has started. So there we go. So while it installs, what I can do is just talk a little bit about XAMPP and how we're gonna specifically configure it to be accessible from the internet. So that's what we're trying to do here today. So by default, when you start up your server on XAMPP, it will be running off of your local network. So any devices on your local network can access your XAMPP server. So that's pretty useful because it works right out of the box, and you don't really need to do any extra configurations to get it working in that way. If you want to use XAMPP for just local testing of your website and just messing around with little different components, you can do it that way, and you don't need to do anything else. But if you want to have it accessible from the internet, there's a couple more steps that arise. So I'm going to explain those just now, like what we'll be doing for that. So you have your local network. And your local network devices on your local network have their own IPs. IPs you can just think of as IDs, basically. They're just identifiers for device, or basically a connection, right? So, and then you also have a public IP, which is separate from your local IP. So what we want right now, like if we were using the local network, we would just use our local device IP. And the specific port, and then just visit that IP, and you'll be able to see your local website. But what we want is for it to be accessible through our public IP from the internet, right? So to do that, you have to configure port forwarding. And you might have heard of that before. So today I'll show you how to do that also really quickly. So port forwarding essentially is an analogy to use for ports is that think of it as just different doors to your house, different entrances, or you can think of it as ports on a marina where different ships can come and dock. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to just set up a path directly from one of our ports to the XAMPP server port. And that will also be the same as the port on our device. Right? So we're just trying to configure a set path straight from our public IP to our device. And so that it can basically, when you try to access the public IP at a specific port, it will go to your device, i.e. the server. So by port forwarding, we are establishing a path from a port to our public IP directly to a port of our local device IP, right? So installation should be done. There we go. It's done just in time. So this is the XAMPP control panel. This is where you'll turn on and turn off your servers. Like if you just click start, your Apache server is running. And it's as simple as that. If you want, often for a website, let's say it's a website, as an example, a website that's running on your server, you might want a database so that you can, if someone's filling in a form on your site, that you can store that somewhere. So you would need MySQL server for that. FileZilla is a file transfer protocol server, and that can be useful for moving large amounts of data across devices, maybe on your local network or even on just across the internet. Mercury is a useful mailing server. You can use that as a part of your testing, as a part of your web development testing if you want your website to be sending maybe weekly emails to registrants. So that's you could use Mercury for that. So what I'm going to do really quickly is for the path that we talked about earlier, I'm going to configure the port right now. So you can basically just go into config and you grab your first Apache file, httpd config. And in here, just search for 80, because that's what our default port is right now. And right here, just this little piece right here, just change that to something like, let's say 100 or 2000, actually. So we're assigning it at a different port. Port 80 is the default port used just generally for a lot of devices. Port 80 is the default port used. So that's why it's probably a good idea just to leave it open for your local network, for your public network. So, and then find the next one, and then for your localhost also just change that to port 2000. So, okay, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Save the file, and then close it, and just stop your server and start it again, and it will change the specific port. So it's changed to port 2000, which is good. This is it's what we want. So now at this moment, your server is accessible on the local network. So any other device on your local network can use your computer or the device that's running XAMPP. It can use its IP and visit that IP, and it'll be visiting your site basically. Going from there, we can look at the file directory just a little bit to understand how things are stored in XAMPP. So actually what I'll do, so going from our control panel, we can go straight to Explorer, right? And so Explorer, this is where our Apache files are, our MySQL files, your PHP files to configure your Apache server, your phpMyAdmin files that you'll be using to configure your database, your Tomcat and Mercury, and also FileZilla. So all the files are all in one place. It's really useful and accessible. I want to talk specifically about htdocs. So this is where you can keep the files for your, let's say your website. So let's use a website as an example, that you want to make a website and run it off of your Raspberry Pi, and you'll have XAMPP running there, right? So in the XAMPP htdocs folder, this is where you would keep all your server files, like your HTML files, your script files, so your JavaScript files, your CSS files. This is where you'll keep it. So right now, because the server is on, technically we should be able to go to our the website. So if we grab our local IP really quickly, so this is our next step. So just type in ipconfig into your command prompt on your device. So when you type that in, you'll get a few different IPs, or a few different pieces of information. This is the IP of your device on your local network. That's important, right? And this is the subnet mask. You don't need that for now. And this is the default gateway. Think of it as just your front door, your main front door for your router, right? So grabbing this IP, because it's running on our local network, i.e. my computer, we can go to it and use the specific port that we specified. And if we just press enter, it should take us to our server. This is our server right here. This is the default dashboard page for our server. And to see how in the file directory that's organized really quickly, it's basically, if you see the URL, it's dashboard/index.html. So it's actually going into this folder and it's going and grabbing this index.html file. So that's the path that's configured, and that's how your file directory for your code would work. So for example, if I wanted to, let's say, use an existing project. So let me just grab an existing project from my file directory, an example project, and just copy it and put it into our htdocs folder. In here, I'll make another folder just called Huzefa. That's my name. And I'll just paste them in there. Okay, so let's close that up. And it should allow us just to go straight to that site now. But if it doesn't, we'll just start and restart our server, but it's good. So we're in the specific directory, we're in the specific file that we want, which is great. Basically, that's how the paths are set up. So if you're gonna have different sections of your website, you can set them up in different folders, and then within that, you can keep your index, your HTML files, your JavaScript files, your CSS files. That's the beauty of using XAMPP, honestly, is that allows you to just keep your front end content very accessible and right there, and also interacting with your backend content. So it allows you to just do some testing very easily. So front end and back end development testing, really great. So we can just test to see if it's working. This is working. It's just a dummy program that I have running just for some testing. So it's good. So our local website is working. So that's great. Now, if we wanted to have it accessible from the internet, we can start port forwarding. So what we'll need to do is first grab, going and grabbing your, just doing ipconfig again. We want to grab our default gateway this time. Okay, so grab that IP, and this is basically the IP of your router itself. It's like the default. It's the default gateway. It's your main house. It's your main home door, and just put that into the internet, and that should take you to your router. You're logging into your router, and you're basically going to your ISP. Now, the next few steps that I do will look a little different for you if you have a different internet service provider, but you should be able to do this with almost all service providers, right? So you want to go into Advanced Tools and Settings, log in really quick, and then go to Port Forwarding. So that's what we're doing now. Okay, so I already have it set up here, but I'll just show you the details of how to do it. XAMPP is just the name of the profile. TCP protocol is what I recommend using. Both will work, but TCP, just avoid conflicts. Try TCP. And then the internal port, you want to make it the same as the one that you set for your XAMPP server in the config files that we just did a little bit ago, right? So make it the same port internally and externally. So this is your external port, as in the port on the public IP that the world sees, and then our internal port for our local IP, right? So we're just linking the 2000th port just together, and that's also the one that I have on my XAMPP server. So that's how we'll set up that. Well, that's how we'll establish that path that I was talking about from the internet directly to your device, right? So with that being said, I've already done this. So these are the details. Oh, sorry, about local IP address. So you have two options. Depending on your ISP, you might not have this option, but you have two options. You can either select your device, which is what I recommend. Selecting your device, basically, it'll identify your device every time, and it'll take the IP of your device, as in it will take this IP, right? Now, if that's not working for you because maybe you have two different routers or something, also just a quick note, if you do have two different routers, this path will be different. Make sure that you know the default gateway for your first router and your second router. Make sure that you set up the port forwarding on the correct router that you want. So you can either select the device so that it'll take the IP of the device every single time, or you can give it a default static IP. And that means that this is the IP that it will use every single time on the local network. This is where it'll send it on the local network every single time. I recommend using this and then just save it. I'm not gonna make my changes permanent. If you do pick the static IP, I can show you really quickly where to go to change it on your device too then. Because, so if your device or devices on your network connect and disconnect from your internet, basically you may not be, you may not have the same IP that you did before, right? It might be, my last extension is 22, it might be 23 or 21, depending on whether someone connected or disconnected, right? This IP can change. So that's why if you want to set it up statically on your device, because that's what you did on your modem, on your modem's login, then you can go to Control Panel on Windows. To go to Control Panel, type in Network and Sharing Center, and then your connections right here. Mine's Ethernet. If yours is Wi-Fi, it'll be fine. And then go to Properties, and then IPv4. That's that right there. Go to Properties of that. And then you'll just use the following IP address, and that's where you'll put in the static IP address that you did on like right here. Oh, sorry. So on your router page, the static IP that you gave it there, that's what you'll want to put in here. Okay, and then you also need to assign a subnet mask and a default gateway, and then also a DNS gateway too, actually. So you need to know where to get those proper values if you are going to take this route. But honestly, using the device one should work just fine, and I don't recommend setting a static IP just because it can make connection a bit of an issue sometimes, just for your local device. So on to the next step. Now we have to take care or deal with our firewall. So this might not be an issue for some firewalls, for some it may. So, and also the next few steps. So the next step that we're going to deal with is taking care of your security client or your firewall, basically, making sure that it's not an issue or it's not stopping you from being able to access your server, because that is a very possible issue. So the solution to that, the solution in the next few steps might look a little different if you have a different firewall or different security client. Mine is McAfee. So if you have Avast or something different, it'll look a little different. So we're going into PC security, and to make sure that the firewall isn't an issue for our server that we want to set up, you go to ports. So in firewall, go to ports, and then go scroll down and just add a new one. So we're going to do that really quickly. So what it's doing is basically whitelisting, kind of like whitelisting a port and saying that that port is okay. So just give it a name so that you can remember, which you did. And then in the local TCP IP ports, this is where you put in that port that you're using for everything, right? So I'm using 2000. So that's where you'll put that there, and then just select open to all PCs. Okay, and then just save that. All right, and there you go. That's good. There it is. So this should basically allow people to go through that 2000 port without the firewall being too much of an issue. You can alternatively try to just turn off your firewall without, if you don't want it to be an issue, you can try to turn off your firewall, but I don't recommend doing that because it can leave you really prone to basically attacks from the internet when you have your server running. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna go just to our last step. So, and that is to basically see. So we have everything running. The server is running. We want to see what is your public IP, right? So what is my public IP? So what I want to do now is basically use my public IP, use my port extension, and see if I can access my website now that I've configured everything, right? So you can just use any type of site, just see what's my public IP. It'll give you it right there. I'm gonna just copy it. Okay, so an important note when you're setting this up, you're not gonna be able to access like your website from your device or like from your like local network. From this device, you're not going to be able to access that website when it's for the public, because think of it as you're trying to call your own phone number from your own phone. Like you can't really do that. So you'll need to basically use another device on your local network to try to, or use your data alternatively to try to visit that website and just see if it works. Okay, so we're gonna take our IP. Okay, and also something that you can use, something else that you can use to see if you're live, basically, see if your public IP and that specific port that you have set up is live and it's working, is this website. It's called canyouseeme.org. So just go there, and then 2000 is the port that I'm going to check, and it should say that, there you go, success. It's on, and it's not blocking, your ISP is not blocking port 2000. So that's great. It's working. In theory, it's working. And now I'm going to just go on data, and I'm going to try to just connect to my website through data just to see if the website will be accessible. So let's do that really quickly. So when you want to give when you want other people to have access to your public site, or if you have, let's say that this is running off of your Raspberry Pi and you have that running just 24/7, so that you can, you know, like if you ever need to upload some files, you have a server that you can just upload them to, or if you want to just host a website off of it, you can repeat these exact steps on the Pi. If you want someone to visit your site, you're going to need to give them your public IP and then the proper port, and that should let them access your site. Okay, so let's type and then port 2000. Okay, and there we go. So it's working. You can see that the default dashboard homepage shows up on our device, and that it is working. I'm using my data right now. I'm using my data right now so that I can basically access the site as if I'm not on my local network, and it is working. So there you go. You have it ready and configured and set up for the world to access your site and see all your beautiful content. So with that being said, I think that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot of functionality and versatility available with this program. Honestly, you can use it for front-end and back-end development, testing, and learning. If you are trying to work on a project with teammates and send information from like one device to the other, and you need one to act as a server, then this is very, very useful for that too. So yeah. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, just drop a like and let me know if there's anything else you'd like for me to do a tutorial about. I might do a tutorial on how to configure this for the Raspberry Pi. So just let me know if you would like to see that. Okay? So have a nice day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.